So today, we're diving into a pretty intense conflict happening inside the Summit at Copper Square, a 23-story high-rise right in downtown Phoenix. But this story's bigger than just one building. It's a perfect case study of a battle that plays out in shared communities all across the country. A fight over safety, over money, and really over who has the final say.
And this quote right here, from homeowner Donna Hulbert, it kicks off a whole legal hearing. She's essentially putting her own homeowners association on trial. And right from the jump, you can tell the stakes are incredibly high for everyone involved.
At the heart of it all? Well, there's a water leak from the swimming pool that's been a problem for years, a budget that's supposedly hanging on by a thread, and this fundamental disagreement over who's actually responsible for protecting the building and the residents' investment.
Okay, let's get into it.
All right, first up, let's look at the homeowner's case. Donna Hulbert is leveling some really serious charges against the volunteer board of directors, and her complaints pretty much boil down to three main things: neglecting what she sees as a dangerous structural problem, totally mismanaging the association's money, and, well, just breaking their own rules.
Now, what's really telling here is this timeline. The homeowner points out the damage was first seen way back in January of 2020. But it takes over 3.5 years, let that sink in, for the HOA to get its first official investigation going. By July 2024, there are multiple reports confirming deterioration and corrosion of the steel rebar inside the concrete slab. So the homeowner's argument is that this huge 4.5-year gap, it isn't just a slow response. It's a complete failure to protect the building. To her, it's just plain negligence. And her whole case really hinges on this specific word from the community's founding legal document, shall. She's arguing that shall makes these repairs mandatory. It's not a suggestion. It's not something the board can choose to do. It's a non-negotiable obligation that she says they failed to meet. Okay, so the second big allegation shifts from the building's physical safety to its financial health. Hulbert points directly to the building's main checking account, which holds just a tiny fraction of what's needed for 1 month's expenses. For anyone who manages a budget, let alone for a multi-million-dollar building, this number, she says, is a massive, massive red flag. And this slide right here just lays it all out. According to the homeowner, the HOA's own management company recommends keeping 3 times the monthly expenses in that account. But the reality? They have just 1/10 of that. She claims it's gotten so bad, they're holding on to invoices and paying vendors late.
She also points to what she calls a pattern of budgeting blunders. For instance, she claims they're basing the new budget on last year's plan, not what they actually spent, which included some huge cost overruns. Look at the water damage line item. They budgeted $20,000 but spent almost $90,000. That's a huge disconnect that she argues puts the whole community at risk.
So now let's flip the script and look at the HOA's side, because they paint a totally different picture. Their defense is really built on the idea that, hey, we're unpaid volunteers, we're doing our best, we're relying on professional advice, and we're acting within our rights.
And this is the direct counter-argument. The HOA's whole defense rests on this one key phrase from their lawyer: sole discretion. They're saying the governing documents give the board, as the elected representatives, the exclusive power to make the judgment calls on repairs, on maintenance, and on the budget.
So far from being negligent about the pool leak, they claim they followed a very logical, step-by-step process, right? They hired professionals, they worked to find where the leak was coming from, they fixed it, and now they're following what the experts recommend for testing. For them, this isn't inaction. It's just how you handle a really complex problem, methodically.
The HOA's position here is that they're being careful, they're being prudent. Their lawyer argues you can't just see a crack and jump to conclusions. You have to wait for the experts to do their job and give you the real data before you start spending a ton of money on repairs. In their eyes, this is responsible management, not a negligent delay.
And when it comes to the money, well, the two sides are just worlds apart. The homeowner sees a budget that completely ignores reality and reserves that are dangerously low. The HOA says, no. The budget was passed appropriately, our reserves are funded just fine, and we rely on our own financial experts, not just the management company's guidelines.
And this is really the knockout punch in the HOA's defense. They're basically saying if a homeowner doesn't like how the board is making decisions, their solution isn't a lawsuit. It's to get involved in the politics of the community, run for a seat on the board, make your case to your neighbors, and go win an election.
So in their final statements to the judge, each side really boiled their argument down to its core.
And what you end up with are two completely opposing views on what it means to responsibly run a shared community like this. The homeowner's final argument was, really, a passionate plea for accountability. She argued that people rely on those legal documents when they buy their homes, and the board has a duty to follow them, period. She framed her lawsuit not as an attack, but as the absolute last resort to force the board to protect the building and everyone's money.
The HOA, on the other hand, defended the whole system of volunteer governance. They painted a picture of themselves as fellow homeowners, acting in good faith, making tough calls based on what the experts told them. They basically framed this whole dispute as one single owner who just wants things run her way, and argued that a courtroom is not the place to settle what's just a policy disagreement.
So the hearing's over, all the arguments are on the table, but as of right now, the judge has not yet made a decision. And that leaves this huge central conflict just hanging in the air, with the future of the building's repairs and its finances totally up in the air.
At the end of the day, this whole case boils down to a really fundamental question that thousands of communities just like this one wrestle with every single day. Is it the duty of the elected board to use their own discretion as they see fit? Or is it the right of an individual owner to force that board to follow the absolute letter of the law? It's this constant tension between the group and the individual that, for now, remains unresolved.